Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of GRC Weekly Podcast. I'm here with Marcus Cantor, who joined me last week. And today we're going to address something that has been on our minds. It's not directly going to be about technical GRC knowledge as such as we were planning for it to be, but we wanted to look into how expectations affect us in our daily lives. So, not just our personal lives, but also in our careers. How at times we can overproject and make ourselves seem like experts in something, but we end up looking a fool if we don't meet those expectations. And even if our work is of good quality, we tend to not put our best face forward, and it can affect our reputation in the long run. So, what's going to be so important for you in your compliance career is understanding as an applicant what CISOs expect from you to do and know how to exceed their expectations, perhaps with your content creation, with the type of knowledge that you've accumulated, and also using the backgrounds and experiences you've had in previous jobs to set yourself apart and give yourself that unique value add in the market. So, yes, I'm going to let Marcus say a quick hi to you. And on his side, he will be talking about how GRC teams are actually set up. What we want you to avoid doing is when you read job descriptions, you want to make sure that you only take on responsibilities that belong to you. You're not doing the work of a SOC analyst or a pen tester or a software developer. You understand what exactly GRC means, which is governance, risk, and compliance, and you know what you're responsible for, and you can't be duped as a newbie because trust me, they will try it. So we're here to help you protect yourselves. So I've gone on long enough. Gonna let Marcus say hi, and yeah, thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Miriam, and it's good to be here. So thank you, everybody that's made it back here for week 2. And Miriam and I were just talking about these topics we're going to discuss today. Excuse me. I think it's really important to understand how you're going to fit into the organization. So initially, I think everybody comes to cybersecurity, or at least I did, from a perspective of I'm getting into cybersecurity, right? So there were a few debates I saw on LinkedIn. Is there a difference between cybersecurity and information security? And from the outside looking in, at first I thought it seems pretty similar, right? I think that we can interchange the two. However, once you actually get into how an organization operates, cybersecurity is more of a strategy as a whole of how the company is going to accomplish their goals using IT solutions. Information security would be the security of the information that your company is using to accomplish those business goals. So if you think about it, everyone in the business today is going to be using data, storing data, sending data in one way or the other. So you have to think about how your data is being protected in each of those stages. You know, does it need to be encrypted while it's in storage? Who has access to that data? And who protects who has access to that data? So all those things are covered in what's called GRC. So the term GRC gets lumped together. What it actually stands for: the governance, the risk, or the risk management of the company's cybersecurity goals, as well as the compliance. And so if we're trying to figure out how GRC fits into the SOC, if we look at the NIST framework, right, and I don't have it up on the screen, I'm not going to waste our time pulling it up. You have 5 different domains where you need to identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, right? So in that identify and detect and protect range is where you're going to have things such as an IDS, right, where you can identify, detect a system, or, you know, it's a detection system, as well as you can have IPS, which will be your protection system. And this may be something from your Sec Plus class if you've taken that course, or you've gone through the material and you're trying to understand the difference between an IDS and an IPS. And you may see the two together as IDS/IPS. And you need to understand that one is able to detect what's going on. So all it's going to do is send you alerts that says, hey, something's going on. So that's something like a Splunk or a Zeek or something like that, where they will go based on baseline configurations or user profiles. And if you get certain alerts based on the configurations that the cybersecurity engineers or analysts use, then those alerts will get sent to someone to notify them that there is a problem in the system. So that's detection. Now, protection would be able to notice that something is going on and actually stop it from happening. So, for example, if you had an ISP, an internet service provider, or a data center for your backup and everything, and they're running all your traffic, but they're protecting your company against DDoS attacks, right? That they're able to detect that you're getting a higher than normal traffic flow, and they'll be able to divert that traffic so you don't shut down your website. That would be IPS, right? Protection. So the reason I'm going through all of those things is because in your SOC or your security operations center, right, you're going to have a group of people. Generally, it depends on the organization, right? So you have to look at an organization and where they are in their cybersecurity capabilities maturity model, or the CCMI index. Initially, when companies are first starting, they don't really have an InfoSec department. They probably don't even have a cybersecurity department. It's usually coming out of developers or integrators and architects that are putting together all the different systems. And then you come up with this business need where we really need to take a hold of the security of our information. So you can do that by getting an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider. That's another company that would be doing all of the detection for your network and the monitoring. So when you look at a SOC is operating, or they're responsible for the daily operations, maintenance, and monitoring of the company's network. So they're in the daily activity. They're writing the scripts to check logs. They're reviewing alerts to see if it's actually a true alert or a false alarm. They're escalating items if they can't get past a certain level, if it's more than just a basic alert or something they can dismiss. It gets rotated up, and as your company gets more mature, you will have other people that might be involved in the SOC, such as a threat detection analyst. You might have an IAM analyst. You might have an IAM engineer for your identity access management. You might have PAM, privileged access management engineers. It really just depends on what your company is doing and what the functions are. So does that make sense to you so far before I...
Well, at least to me it does. Like coming from a beginner's mindset back in the day, this would make sense to me. I don't want to go too much into like identity access management and things within security in that sense, but more like adjacent roles that people might see skills come up onto their into the job descriptions. Like I mentioned before, for pen testing, things that have nothing to do with you. Just to be aware of who else will be on your team within a security team.
Yes.
And, just knowing the difference between what a compliance analyst does and what they do. We can pick three main roles that we tend to see. And just before I let you go ahead, I do want to mention to people that when you do research on different cybersecurity roles, you'll see so many different titles like information security analyst, compliance analyst, GRC analyst. Perhaps they will name it after certain frameworks that you've already studied. If you've already looked at the free course, you've seen ISO 27101, you've seen PCI DSS. You could be a qualified security assessor under that. So you need to, on your own, make yourself aware of these different codes and titles that will associate with different frameworks. So it does indicate that those would also be compliance roles, if that makes sense. For the ISO that I mentioned before, its title will be a lead auditor. So instead of just typing ISO, look up lead auditor and you'll see the frameworks that are associated with that. So yes, Marcus, you can go on when it comes to different other job roles on the team.
Absolutely. Okay, can you see my screen over here? I should
Yeah.
be doing now. Okay, so uh, this is a really great point because I think the breakthrough in my job search, right, was being able to narrow down exactly what I was looking for, what I thought I was good at, and what was going to fit in. So the reason I mentioned all that information about the SOC and IDS and IPS is because I think that's what people think cybersecurity is. And so, like you mentioned, there are going to be so many different job descriptions that are going to be posted up there. Um, you really have to read into the description to see, you'll find out how the organization is structured in a way if you can understand what they're asking for. And you can kind of figure out where those tools will report and how it'd be used. But also, like you said, the frameworks. Once I did my apprenticeship with IQ4, and I'll send a link for that as well. But like I said, that was 12 weeks of working through the NIST framework. And it started through going through all 5 of those steps of the NIST framework and then moving into internal threats. So when I started looking for NIST up there in the search bar, it became different. So, for example, if I look up NIST in general, I'm going to find a lot of people that are going to ask you if you're familiar with NIST. And you'll see that it's bringing up different roles. I have an information security specialist and a risk management analyst. Those are 2 different roles. And so is an information security architect.
I haven't seen anything come up on your screen yet.
Okay. Oh, because I'm sharing over here. Okay, here we are. Okay, there we are. Okay, so I typed in NIST up here. And what you're going to get is you're going to see 3 different roles right here. You see a senior IT risk management analyst, you see a senior information security specialist, and an information security architect. And when you're new, these terms look like they're just another name, right? But what I've come to learn is an architect is usually a well-seasoned veteran. They know how the system works. They know how the systems integrate with each other. And they're going to be responsible for assisting in the actual design and development of the IT systems as they get implemented to address the business solution. Everybody stay with me here, right? All right, a security information security specialist. We're going to click on what they want for this role. You're here to support the implementation of a suitable security framework across the organization. This is telling me that the organization is choosing a framework that they're aspiring to. And it's probably going to be one person driving this bus, right? There's probably one person that broke out that said, hey, we need an information security department. So initially you may have an InfoSec manager. And he's just looking at, hey, what's going on? What are we doing? Right. And I'll explain the structure of GRC in a moment. But this is telling me that they're looking for someone to help them implement a support framework. Security culture, which means that they probably don't have a security culture, or if they do, they need to educate people more. Right. So they're looking for security awareness training. So if you've used tools like Know before, if you've done LinkedIn learning, any class that you can take on LinkedIn, most of these businesses will probably have an enterprise account for LinkedIn Learning. So you might find yourself in a GRC role where training, or excuse me, maybe your CIO will say, hey, we need to educate more people about cybersecurity awareness. You might have to come up with a list of topics to review for the next 6 months to a year that you'll put out on a regular cadence. And you can suggest LinkedIn Learning classes to your training. You might have somebody in the organization that deals strictly with training. You cross-reference with them who needs what training. You can say, hey, here's some options. Can we get it plugged in so we can track it through HR and all that? And that's how a GRC analyst will work in a general sense. All right, so.
Just to quickly add a tip.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw in one Gerald Auger video was that depending on what your particular organization needs or what could be a threat to your company, you're allowed to do little mini videos and snippets showing them, or your team, how they should approach certain security issues, just to let them know. So I don't see this as something that has its own fixed schedule that you can never manipulate. Depending on what your organization is facing, you can release whatever content would be most relevant to them.
Absolutely. You know, and a great way to do that is to have a newsletter. At least that's one thing that you can show auditors as well as your leadership, that the education awareness is being addressed on a regular cadence, as well as people, honestly, when you're looking at people trying to adopt cybersecurity principles, if it's not their primary responsibility, they're not really interested. Right. So even though we're really interested in hashes and confidentiality and integrity and availability, everybody else is not. They just want to get to their information. They want to be able to send files quickly, so they don't care if they're going to email it and it has PII in it or not. They like to get free stuff, right? When they go to conferences and they come back and they click on an email that had a link. I saw that you were at the conference, click this link, and they weren't expecting it, right? Phishing attacks. And so just the way that the culture needs to be changed, it can't all be at once. It has to be gradual, and people have to buy into it bit by bit. And how you were saying that people can see GRC as being pushy or annoying on the side, you have to understand that you are asking for, you know, a different behavior from somebody, and they're not going to see the reason why they need to change their behavior and why they have to go through these hoops. All right, so reason I was explaining all of that, because when we come back to the SOC, and that was good that you mentioned that, because I think they were talking about the educational benefits, and I have seen short videos made for 2 to 3 minutes, and that's another thing people don't like to read. So you can write it on the left side, and then you can put a link in the newsletter that says, watch this video, and more people will get value from that video than what you wrote in the newsletter. So, but looking through this job description here, here's where we finally see the SOC mentioned in an advertisement for information security specialist. And they're saying that you're going to manage day-to-day interactions and escalations with our third-party 24/7 SOC provider. So like I mentioned, they don't have a SOC in the company. They're using an MSSP. That's, you know, they're paying the company to monitor their service and watch their tickets and escalate things. So they expect this person to be able to interact with that MSSP on a daily basis to see how they're managing tickets and if they're escalating them. And this is where it might be a cross between SOC operations and GRC. So let me get through the rest of this description and I'll explain why there might be a cross-up. So then we have external threat oversight and mitigation. This is where you can use systems such as Rapid7, Tenable, things of that nature, where basically they can map to CVEs, your critical vulnerability explanations. Right, so whenever you have 0 days and malware attacks and all that stuff, you might see a CVE number attached to it. So that CVE number is telling you, you know, it's a serialized number basically that puts it in a repository. Everybody is able to access CVEs online from OWASP, and this allows your system to map those vulnerabilities to what current conditions are in your network. So if you have a known vulnerability to a known, a known vulnerability to a known threat, we will make efforts to try to close that gap. Log management and detection capability expansion. So this is where they're talking about being able to investigate, recommend, and implement SIEM or XDR solutions. That means they don't even have a SIEM or XDR solution, which makes sense because they're using an MSSP. So this looks like somebody's building out their information security department, and they need someone that knows what information security is. And I'm actually about to do this right now. You're going to pick out a scene. What is that? Rapid7, I think we're using. I've seen other people use like, what's the other one? Splunk. That's it. Everyone sees Splunk. And Splunk offers free training on their website, by the way. So you can go to splunk.com and they have free training.
Can you quickly explain what a CM is? Because a lot of these things are acronyms. I'm sure for someone who's quite new to this topic, it could be a bit confusing. Also, an XDR.
Yeah, so a SIM, and please forgive me because I use it so much that I forget it as well, is a system incident event management tool, right? So, like I said, it has all of your accounts, all of your assets are being monitored, and all the traffic is being monitored. If something happens, it sends a spike, it sends an alert. So it's an incident event management tool. An XDR is the same as like an NDR or and basically that is a detection and response tool. So you can scan your networks and see what's going on. You need to be able to scan your network with the XDR. The SIEM alerts and combines all that information into one place. So there are two different tools that work in conjunction with each other. Yep, they're looking for the detection and response, right? So the XDR is going to be able to scan, for example, Corelight is a company, I know the guys over there, and they actually scan IoT and OT devices as well. So I come from working on wind turbines where you had hundreds of IoT or OT devices in there. And IoT is Internet of Things devices, or OT is operational technology, which is a little different than IT, which is information technology. But stay with me here. All this stuff needs to get, they're sending so much data, especially the IoT devices and wind turbines. BP sends about 1 billion bytes of data per day for their renewable energy assets in North America alone. So you have all these bits of data that are being sent through the cloud. So how is that stuff being secured? How is the transmission of the data being secured? Where is it being stored? You literally have, I mean, thousands of logs. Whenever a turbine goes down, you get the initial log from what happened in that moment, and then you're going to get a historical log that has records from the past 6 months, right? So that's where an XDR will come into play, because most people don't think about cybersecurity on IoT and OT devices, but an XDR will be able to scan those. NDRs will be able to scan your computers, your servers, everything that you have on your network, basic IT. So I hope I cleared that up.
You did, and something caught my eye on this job description. I'd love you to look at the basic and preferred qualifications
Yes.
and the part that speaks about security engineering, because I think that kind of captures the situation that this company is in. Like you said, they're just building out the information security program.
Right.
I'm I'm shocked but not surprised to see that.
Well, again, the reason I see this happening is because as I'm going to break down GRC, we see where everything should fit neatly into a box if you put it into the triangle, but it doesn't work like that, right? Especially for somebody that's just starting up. And I have a pretty strong idea that this is one guy that really believed that they need an information security department, and he's trying to put it together. And he's just won management's buy-in, I guess you could say, to actually advertise for a role, because now he's shown that he has so much work to actually manage information security. He needs to bring in a specialist. And so the reason this security engineering is coming in, they're asking for a high school diploma with 6 years of experience directly involved in security engineering, or your bachelor's with 3 years experience working in security engineering. So they want somebody that has actually been in a SIM and XDR and pulling these reports and looking at tickets and resolving tickets. They just want somebody that has done it for 3 years. So that's the entry-level position as a security engineer. If you can find that junior cybersecurity engineer position, you'll see opportunities like that.
What I'd like to add as well is usually we always suggest that people should apply to jobs anyway, but when you see things taking a tangent like this, especially when you're a beginner, it's probably not the role for you. Now, if the title had said Senior Information Security Analyst, that's different from a specialist, because that specialist word, as you've seen, is expecting you to take on different hats and know the systems through and through, and you won't be at that level yet. It's nothing bad, it's just realizing what the reality looks like and actually going for what will be most likely for you to succeed in.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you said that because this frustrated me, right? Especially when you're looking for jobs and you're just trying to figure out where you fit in and you're putting in IT specialist, IS specialist, information security analyst. Like you just think they're all the same. But like you said, this right here, if you can think about the daily requirements for this job, they expect you to be a guiding force in making this happen. You're going to be talking to a lot of management in this role right here. You're going to be analyzing their system and actually making recommendations that's going to cost the company millions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years. You know, we're just looking at using one GRC solution where they say it's 60,000 a year minimum. And so you're thinking, oh, that's 60,000 a year. And by the way, when you start hearing what software prices are, you'll be kind of blown away by them, but it makes sense for a business. So 60,000 is not a $60,000 decision. That's more like a $500,000 decision. It's really more like $1 million decision. If you look at implementation, which is going to cost another 100 to 150,000. So that's 200,000 in the first year, and then you're going to spend 60,000 for the next 5 to 8 years, 10 years. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is GRC is a great opportunity for you to learn how businesses work and to have really high level conversations that you would not be able to access in different roles. So this guy right here, I'm going to finish up the job description right here, but they're asking for prior tactical and strategic experience in leading information security initiatives. They want to know that you've actually done it before and been able to convince people. Leading or being part of a team. Fortunately, I got stuff like that through the military, and you have to look at your own experience, and you can say, yes, I have leadership, even if you were a shift lead at Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean? Like you knew how to get people to execute a process. They're asking for familiarity with NIST cybersecurity. You'll also see that as NIST CSF, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, ISO 27001 or CIS. So the ISO 27001, they're really starting to shoot for some attestations. They're probably preparing to go towards SOC 2 and stuff like that, but they probably have some SOC 1 controls in place that they need to firm out. And so this is how you read through a job description, everybody. It's until you know what's going on and you understand what these independent parts mean, you just look at a job description and you apply for it, you're going to be wasting your time, honestly. But this direct responsibility for the following: penetration testing. You just asked about that. Forensic incident response, security control, gap analysis, and security administration or network defense. That's a mouthful. When they say that you're responsible for one or more of the following, you're not actually going to pen test anything, right? You might meet with the vendors. You're going to shortlist a group of vendors. You're going to have to run a risk management on using those third-party vendors or assessment to determine who you're going to use. You're going to get all of their quotes. You're going to have another meeting about who fits your needs best. And then you're going to hire that external pen tester. And that external pen tester will then come to your company. And usually the way it gets done, it kind of depends on what you order and everything like that. But they might spend the first week just trying to break your internet from the outside and gain admin domain control. So if they can get an admin credential and, able to traverse your network, that's what they're trying to do. And then they'll do a kind of gray box testing where they'll come in where they do have some access to your tools, and they'll see if they can move across different things. The whole point is you have to understand what they're doing. They're going to send a report back to you after they complete their analysis. And that analysis will tell you that, hey, we have cross-site scripting opportunity vulnerabilities. We have information where if I type in the wrong password, that it sends a message back that says it's an incorrect password username exchange, right? Or it will tell you that the username doesn't exist. And some of that information can actually help a hacker understand that if they put in information, if the combination is wrong, at least I know the username exists, right? So then from there, I can brute force. And if you know the strength of passwords, it takes maybe 4 days for a strong computer to brute force an 8-character password, right? So then you start looking at password policies, all that stuff. The whole point is there's penetration testing. You're not going to be a penetration tester right there. You're not going to get your EJPT for that. You don't need it. You need to be able to understand what they're saying, and then you're going to take this report and you're going to talk geek, I would say, in a way to your colleagues, for your so that you can get all the technical aspects together and how it's going to affect the company. And you need to aggregate all of that and create a report that speaks business to leaders. Leaders don't care about the technical aspect of how this asset was breached. They want to know, do we have a process in place that addresses that and mitigates that risk? What is the business implication? What are the implications of not getting this done? And so you're going to have to understand, is it risky enough for me to have to take action? And if it is risky enough for me to take action, what resources do I have available to take action on that risk? And how do I allocate those resources? How do I map it out? Is it going to integrate with anything else? And all this stuff, it's a whole circle. So you'll have this penetration test, say in January, and they might come back, the firm might come back with you in 6 months in July and say, okay, we found these vulnerabilities. What did you do to fix them? And so in the meantime, you have a lot of reporting that goes in between, but you could say that management is aware of this. We got an acknowledgement, we got a response back. We got the stakeholder in charge of it. We're mapping we're tracking what's going on. That's pretty much the daily business of a GRC, right? You'll have a pen test you're probably following up on. You'll probably have an assessment that probably happened, especially if they're looking for ISO 27001. That means you brought in another company that did an assessment on that ISO 27001 status. And the whole point is you need to know what these things are and how they work and what they are for. You're not going to have to pen test. You're not going to have to. In this instance, you probably will be in the logs and in the SIM, I would say, on a regular basis, right? So, all right, I'm going to leave that job description alone because I really want to explain what GRC is and why.
Wait.
Yes.
Sorry, don't leave yet. I want to point out some things in the job description that I'd like to add. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so you guys heard Marcus that you won't need to pen test or do instant response. These are more on the offensive side, and we're on the defense, or what we like to call blue team. Now, what you need to consider as well is that as part of Techpreneurs Club, we're not trying to make you responsible for anything yet. Like we didn't promise you this exactly, but we're trying to get you into GRC roles that will give you the time and freedom to pursue your other businesses or ideals or lifestyles. And these kind of roles don't let you do that because you see the level of responsibilities that are included. So just be aware of the kind of work you're willing to take on, even if you decide that you want to have a career in compliance, regulatory compliance and cybersecurity. You understand what you'll be responsible for and the depth of knowledge you'd have to have about information systems and perhaps the certifications you'd need to get to build your knowledge. For a role like this, something like a CISM might be useful. What does it stand for again? Certified Information Security Manager.
Yeah.
Systems manager. Yeah. Something like that would be, as you can see here, I didn't even read, but as you can tell, it's very useful for this kind of role. As you scroll down and it shows the benefits. Scroll down a bit.
I thought the benefits were there.
Okay, yeah, the benefits are there as well.
Oh, okay.
You see that it says referral program. So this is a tip that I'm going to give you guys. Getting a referral as a way to network into the job you want to have can be very useful. Applying for jobs in and of themselves can sometimes be daunting, can waste a bit of time if you're applying for roles that have hundreds of applicants already. It's usually a time thing. If you see a job role available, you should apply very soon because once you exceed maybe 20 or 30 people, or I'd say maximum, 100, then you don't really have a good chance of having your resume looked over. But when you know that this organization has a referral program, that means you can go onto your LinkedIn or do your own research of who works at that company and see who has a similar job title. And you can start connecting with them. Now, don't do this just because you want a job. Don't come across as desperate. However, you are now sure that you're looking into the kind of company that gives referral programs. Perhaps they pay their own employees for suggesting legitimate candidates for a job. But also, you have connections to people who are likely to hire you directly anyway. If someone's at the beginning of creating a security team, they're the ones that will choose who the compliance analysts are once given the budget. So you would be first in mind. Now, I know, unfortunately, most compliance team only comprise of maybe 5 to 10 people. They're pretty small. So I'm not saying you should just wait for compliance analyst roles to exist. However, people on the managerial level know other security managers in different companies. So you see where I'm going here. If you can't make it into their company, you can always ask them, do you know another security company that I could work for, or any compliance roles that are open from the network connections that you have? And, I'll give it my best shot. I'll apply, whatever it may take. And they may know some open positions for you. So that's a trick that I like to use. Go through networks of people who are already hiring, and they are from companies that have referral systems, because they are likely to associate with other companies and other colleagues that are in the same position as them.
Absolutely, and that really does work. At first, I thought that was an extra thing that you need, but the past two roles that I've accepted were because of a personal contact that I made prior to. So even with the internship, I was at a networking event about a month or two ago, and the vendor risk management manager was telling me how impressed that they were with me, because they noticed that I had added her, I had added like her manager, I think. I had hired my eventual manager at that job and the people I was going to work with, right? Because I looked at the company, I did what I just did up here on the screen, and I went around the company, I found names. This guy that's working on help desk, he's the guy that's currently handling tickets at StrataCash. This is the guy that you're going to, I guarantee this guy's getting tickets every day, or he's dealing with the MSSP, or, like password resets or something like that. So you don't just say like, hey man, I saw there's a job over here, I'm interested. You could just, say, hey, I'm interested. I saw this position was open and I wanted to know more about the company. Are you open to network? If you're pretty straightforward and you don't put in that I need something from you, like you're usually all right. So don't get in people's inbox asking for something right off the bat. Don't ask to pick people's brain. I think people are really getting annoyed with that. And really is because it's a value dump, right? I mean, this guy right here, if you reach out to him and say, let me get this guy's crap, 100 people might reach out to him, right? And everybody's saying, hey, can I pick your brain for 5 minutes? Hey, can I get on a call for 30 minutes? And everyone's going to have the same basic questions, right? And they're not even going to be helping him. It's going to suck his time up. So you just have to find a way to say that, hey, I'm interested. I'm trying to network, trying to learn more, something like that. You might not get a response back or not, but just keep sending those out. And, people that add you, they'll recognize you. And like I said, someone told me 3 months later that was the reason why, they kind of put a bug in someone's ear. They were like, oh yeah, that guy was already looking us up, so it shows your research skills as well too, right?
Exactly. And I do want to move on to the expectation part now that we've looked at a job description. But briefly before we do that, I want to go over things that you should expect in a typical GRC job description that was not mentioned here. For instance, doing vulnerability scans is one that you'll see often. Security training is common as well. So like I mentioned before, creating a newsletter for your organization, creating videos that will help them with their security training and building their knowledge. And you should also expect to, after you do vulnerability scans, you need to be able to work with certain types of frameworks, the ones that we've shown you in our free course. Please check it out if you haven't yet. It's on the featured section of the Facebook group. So he's just pulling up one right now. Yes, NIST, ISO series, we've covered that. SOX is a financial.
Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley. So I would say if you're starting to get into GRC, SOX probably ain't the right spot to start, right? Sarbanes-Oxley is more on a CPA level. That's more financial reporting. And if you're a publicly traded firm, you have to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley. That's so that we're all, I had to take this class back in accounting in like 2001 when they actually came up with Sarbanes-Oxley. It's so everybody could be on the same method of accounting and reporting, right? So now in Europe, we report the same as we do here in America because we're all SOX compliant. So, and I won't even say stay away from it, right? Because I just kind of explained it right there. So don't be intimidated by these frameworks, right? But so okay, here's how GRC works. They're asking for a GRC analyst. When you have a company that is trying to accomplish a business goal, they are going to have a vision initially, right? Whether it's your CEO, CIO, somebody has a vision of what they want to accomplish. And then they're going to create a mission statement to accomplish that vision. And within that mission statement, they're going to have to break that down, now that you have a mission, into a strategy. And so your strategy is what's going to provide your technical plans. And your technical plans are what allow you to be compliant with the regulation to accomplish the vision. So I might have to whiteboard that. Where's whiteboard? I forgot how to whiteboard right now. That's crazy.
Okay.
We did it yesterday.
Bottom right-hand corner.
You said right hand. Oh, you know what? It's
You should be able to see it. Bottom right-hand corner next to the apps.
I have to find where the actual Zoom screen is right now.
Oh, okay. If you're not on there, then.
Yeah, but either way, so the whole point of what I'm saying there is that GRC is helping the business accomplish their business goals by actually implementing the controls that are going to allow that to happen. And I really need to find my Zoom.
There it is, isn't it?
Yeah, there it is. This is another thing that I noticed too. I really hated being in meetings, and you're managing the computer during the meeting, so it will really test your presentation skills while you're in front of everybody. Oh, there it is, whiteboard, boom. Teamwork. All right, cool. Teamwork. Awesome. So yeah, your business organization has a vision, and they're going to turn that vision into a mission. And that mission is going to turn into a strategy. I'm just trying to figure out how to move these boxes around so they make sense. That one doesn't want to make sense. Okay. So then you have a strategy, and that strategy is going to break off into what you have technical requirements, or is going to give you how you actually do things. And so GRC is over here on the side. This decision, as far as the vision, where do you think this decision is coming from?
How do you mean?
I would say, where do you think that decisions at the organizational level are being made? Is that a manager or an individual contributor? Or is it
I
leadership?
thought it was C-suite executives. You can teach me because you've been at the company longer.
Right, that'd be leadership. That can be C-suite, that can be executive leadership. Right, but either way, that's going to come from the uppers. They're going to say, hey, we're trying to do this. And so the C-suite is going to pass that on. You might have a CIO in your company, you might not. But say if you have a CIO, chief information officer, you have a CTO, chief technical officer, he's going to get that responsibility passed on to him. How are we going to accomplish this? And in that, he's generally going to bring in either a consultant or an SME subject matter experts that he has already on board, or you bring in consultants, and they're going to have to figure out the business flow as well as the business process as well as the governance. Because originally they're going to have to figure out what we're actually trying to accomplish. Somebody's going to get in Visio. So this is another tool y'all can get familiar with. If you learn Visio, that makes you a pretty strong candidate as well, because it's used for visual representation of workflows. Right, so somebody has to come in and say that we're going to be moving this data from point A to point B, and in between there, we need to make sure that we have a rule that ensures that the information we're moving does not get sent out to people that should not have access to that information. And so they're the ones over here figuring out the mission, from them getting feedback from the consultants. Now the CIO, CTO, whoever's in charge of that can come over here and make a strategy. So now they can say, okay, we see the steps that we have to take. We see the restraints that we have. We see the resources that we have. Now we're going to come up with these technical operations. And I was looking for a pencil. There you go. You're going to have technical operations, and you're going to have more of them, right? Because these are, in the military, they call them SOPs, standard operating procedures. Y'all may have heard of those before, right? And so GRC is going to be grabbing all this stuff here, and then they basically audit it in a way to make sure that it's achieving what's going on, what we asked for up here. So everything comes down this way, and it goes back up through GRC. Now, the way this is implemented, right, is the fact that your vision is going to be something like this is where you get like a vision. There'll be more like a meeting. A mission statement is what you'll get out of this. So you'll get a mission statement coming out of, we have our vision and we're trying to figure out how to do it. So now we're going to make a statement, and that's going to be a document that gives a high level view of what we're trying to accomplish in this goal. And then as you come down to your strategy, this is where you can start getting into building a project around it. So not project management as far as, like people think PMP, certification, not a project manager as far as getting something done. You're going to have you're going to have a program. That's why that doesn't make sense. So you're going to have a program built around this strategy. And that program is going to involve all these technical operations. So just to use a really general idea, right? We have a company called ABC, and they are trying to conduct operations, or they're supporting a company that's in Europe. So they're going up there. Please excuse my crew lines and stuff that's going on here. So they're supporting the company in the EU. They might be in the US, They might be in India, something like that. But let's say they're in the US. And if I'm providing a service to these people over here, I have to be able to follow their rules and regulations. Now, if you're in the EU, what rules and regulations would you expect I need to follow in regards to IT?
GDPR, the privacy.
Yep, GDPR. So I'm over here in the States. We honestly don't use GDPR that much here in the United States. I might be over here on I might be on the NIST CSF.
But it depends on the data that your company handles, because that's what GDPR is applicable to. So it's not just it's not just EU citizens.
Right.
It's you handle data from customers from the EU, then you have to use GDPR. And it depends on, data residency as well. If a company has operations or offices in, let's say, Dublin, in Ireland, it's very common because they have low tax rates.
Right. Oh, that's why. Okay.
That's why, yeah.
I was wondering.
You guys didn't know, that's why everyone goes to Ireland, low tax rates. But if it's a situation like that, then they would need to be aware of GDPR. And don't use the term GDPR compliant. There's no such thing. I will go into an article about that, but they would have to adhere to the GDPR regulation. Let me just put it that way for now.
Yes, exactly. So it's not like I'm going to come over here and I'm trying to get a GDPR attestation or anything, right? That's not the case. I'm providing some kind of a process, personnel, or technical service to this company. I have to be compliant. So this is what you would call a subservice. This company over here will be a subservice of this company providing a service to someone else. And while you're using a subservice, say this was Amazon, that could be AWS. All right, so you're using Amazon, they're trying to support what you're doing over here in the EU. You know that you have GDPR solutions, guidelines that you need to adhere to. So the person from EDS is going to go through their whole framework, and they're going to have other stuff like they're going to have their SOC 1, their SOC 2, and they have a SOC 3. And the reason I can share that with y'all, if you get an AWS account, if you go to Amazon and get an AWS account, get into the cloud, you can actually download their SOC reports. So SOC reports will actually show you what I don't really know how to change that. So no.
I don't want to go too far into the types of attestations for now.
No, not going there.
Okay.
Not going there. My whole point is that they have what they're already adhering to. A SOC 2 is something that you're already reporting. Yes. You're making an assertion, right? And this is more terminology will help you learn or appear to know more about what you're doing if you're in an interview. An assertion is saying that this is what we do. Within that assertion in this SOC 2 letter, they're going to be telling you these are all of our controls in place so that we're secure. And if we had to be GDPR compliant, there are going to be what's called some user entity controls that need to be in place. So in order for us to make sure that we're compliant, we're going to need to make sure that our user actually does certain things. So for example, if you're using AWS S3 buckets, it will be we're going to say you should have a control in place that makes sure that people that have access to your S3 buckets have the appropriate authority and that they have or that it's been approved by someone that is authorized to give you that authorization, right? Basically that you can't go in here and anyone in your company can create a bucket or get access to it. So AWS is going to tell you that you have to have a control in place for that. Same, it's going to be a whole bunch of them. It might, I think it's like 18 right now for the most part what they offer vendors. And so your consultant that we were talking about earlier that does that risk analysis, your consultant is going to take what you're doing right now and he's going to get that information through there and we're going to reconcile it back. And that's the whole process of GRC, is that The governance is going to come from the technical operation. How do we do this? The risk analysis gets done here. When you're figuring out that I have a framework I need to get to, that's a terrible R, right? But you're trying to figure out what we're trying to get to.
Worse.
Risk
Don't
management.
you're bad.
Right, and the compliance is going to come in you actually doing what you should do. That was pretty bad.
And then you audit to ensure. In fact, you know what? Before we move on, I want you to go over the difference between gap analysis, risk analysis, audit, and compliance, because those are what people have messaged me about, that they don't understand the difference. They think it's one and the same. But just go over briefly what the main differences are between those two pairs of terms.
Okay, so you said audit, gap analysis, risk analysis.
And compliance. What's the difference between audit and compliance first? And then the difference between gap analysis and risk analysis.
All right, compliance is making sure we follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Which is going to spring forth from governance. Governance comes from an audit or assessment. How does that happen? Because an audit, if we were right now, like we're just getting a SOC 2 audit, an external auditor comes in, they're going to come in and verify that the organization represents their IT system in an accurate and complete fashion. So the auditor is coming in here to say that if you have a rule that says that badge access to the data center, everyone has to use a badge and they have to use biometric fingerprint, right? So as an auditor, it will be my job to take a sample of the population throughout the audit period. So if this audit period was from January 1st to 2021 to freaking, what is it, December 31, right? I'm going to look back over that whole time. Now you have to figure out a methodology, and that's going to go deeper into auditing, but I would have to figure out what method of testing makes sense to figure out if people are required to use a badge and fingerprint to get into the building. So I might sit out there for 30 days out of the year, and actually look at them. I might pull logs from their ChronoSync or something like that, one of their systems that ties in, that would show that a badge was swiped at this time. Maybe there's a video camera that can, coincide with the time that they swiped. That's where you'll start seeing stuff like, what do they call it, door surfing, where if somebody opens the door and somebody else comes in with them, that's part of the audit. So say if I look at over a year and you have 100 employees and I watch these 100 employees go for say like 3 months. And I notice that every now and then so-and-so opens the door for a woman because she's holding something. Or I noticed that, the guy said he forgot his badge, somebody let him in. These are things that you can audit either by asking questions, finding evidence or evidence being provided to you, or observation. You can do site visits. There's a lot that you can do to just verify. You're really just digging in to say, are you really doing this? Right. And I kind of want to find the instance where you don't. And when I find the instance that you don't, that allows me to make a report back to you that says, hey, you're not doing this. So now the report of gaps is where you're going to have your gap analysis. So if we're trying to adhere to NIST CSF, and we're currently on, I don't know, let's say we're at ISO 27001. That would be a good one. There's going to be a lot of correlation between those two, but there's going to be certain controls that the NIST CSF has that the ISO 27001 doesn't have, and vice versa. So your gap analysis is going to be, what's the gap? Literally, what's the difference? Then we're going to go through a risk analysis of how serious is that gap. Right. So criticality, resources, likeliness of happening, impact if it happens. Right. All this stuff has to be considered by management. Or you try to get together a risk analysis committee or something like that that thinks that risk is serious and we need to consider it. Right. So that's how it all comes together. And so if you're trying to understand where you lie in the SOC, it's like you're not actually in the daily operations of the SOC, except for in that one instance where they need a specialist, right? But that specialist is trying to help them accomplish all of this. That company could literally be in that position where they're trying to support somebody in another country and they have to adhere to a new framework or something. If they're trying to get ISO 27001, I'm pretty sure they're getting ready for big contracts, right? So, and it's internationally recognized. So that's where I think you were saying that, like, don't focus so much on the frameworks. It's really good if you know how to read a SOC 2 report. I would say get your Amazon account, and I can put instructions on how to actually get there from your Amazon console. But read a SOC 2 report. It's amazing. If you're a dork like that, right? But it'll tell you the scope of the project. It tells you the services that they're providing. It tells you where all their services are located, our strategy on how we run our system, our mission statement. It does all that stuff. And then it says, here's our controls to make sure that we're secure. And we cannot verify that we're going to be secure unless the people that are using our products implement certain controls on their side. And on the same side, we're also using products. So we can't really be secure unless the people that we're using products from have these certain controls to keep us safe. So it becomes a user and a vendor exchange where everybody's trying to figure out who's to blame. And so you just have to find that neutral spot where you can say, this is the rule that we follow because it accommodates everybody's needs.
Exactly. This is what I'd say a great place to start. Even just to go back to the point where you talked about on-site visits for audits,
right?
That is eventually when you look at how businesses have their own plans to protect themselves in the event of a data breach. So that's what we call contingency plan, which we go into a lot more detail in the Tech Premium Club, showing you how to go through contingency plans at different stages of it and what would be expected of you in particular on an on-site visit, because some of you may have to do that. You may be mostly remote, but every now and then have to come into the office maybe once a month to do this. So I hope this has clarified for you, first of all, the types of roles that exist adjacent to being a compliance analyst, how to read job descriptions a little to understand what's expected of you. And, as Marcus has shown us, the different levels of management and seniorities within the compliance team and what the GRC analyst has to do within it. And of course, we ended with what compliance analyst is in comparison to auditors and what the gap analysis is compared to risk assessments. Now, I want us to end with expectations. We were supposed to start with that as a cute little introduction, but I'm glad that Marcus has gone over what GRC is because many people are quite confused. Now, as I said in the introduction, we tend to approach things with a lot of expectations on what we want them to be, but we don't consider how we appear as applicants in the job market. Now, you must have heard already that being a compliance analyst or having this kind of role will mean that you can have 6 figures as a remote worker. That in and of itself is an expectation. Now, you can say, okay, that's the case, that's what I want. However, you need to know, what would a chief information security officer who is likely going to interview you, who owns a security team, what is he going to expect from someone like you? Now, I'm going to give you guys a quick analogy when it comes to art. there are so many people who want to purchase art and they think the value of art is in how photorealistic it is. You know what I'm talking about. People who can draw so perfectly it looks like a real picture.
Right.
Now, I'm sure some of you guys are confused when you go to contemporary museums and you see someone draw a dot and it's priced at $3,000. Now, yes, this could be an example of money laundering. We'll get to that another day, but sometimes people see it and they think, yes, this dot on a page is worth $3,000. And the reason is expectations. Now, you need to be hyper aware of where your skill level is at, because just like the person who believes that real art is drawing something that's hyper realistic, they've now set the expectation for themselves that they have to be that good in order to be an artist. And if you try to draw something that's hyper realistic and you don't do it quite well, even if you are quite good and it was a genuinely good attempt, it will come across as bad because it doesn't look picture perfect. But if you decide that you're going to draw a dot on a page and your art has always been abstract and open to interpretation, then people have no choice but to basically judge you on your level. They can't compare you to anything hyper realistic because you never said that you did that. You said that you create interpretive art. So if they can't appreciate the interpretation, the fault's on them. Do you see the trick here?
Yeah.
So both pieces of art will have the same retail price, even though it took way more talent to do one than the other. Now you need to see your job search the same way. GRC can be a technical role in that you need to know quite a lot of technical information to get ahead. Now, there are so many people who go into this space not wanting to learn so much technical knowledge, but you need to understand that your competitors will be up there when it comes to that. Perhaps they know how to create a security program from the ground up. Now, when you understand that, having the technical knowledge may not be enough in and of itself. You need to look at your background and understand how you can advertise yourself in a way that you won't have competition. So let's say, for instance, I'm a nurse. Some of you are in the healthcare field. Instead of just applying for any old GRC role, perhaps you can work for a healthcare service provider. And you will have, in terms of frameworks or regulations, this would be HIPAA that you might have seen before in our course. Now, this sets you up in a position of expertise, because if you've been in your nursing career for a while, or even if it's just a year, you know what healthcare systems look like. And you can draw from that experience to say that you're better than the other applicants, that no matter how much experience they have in GRC as a whole, at least you've worked with the framework and you know what identity access management looks like in your particular circumstances. You've interacted with tools that will set you ahead. So those are the kind of examples I'm looking at. So in your personal time, I want you guys to list all the key performance indicators that a company will hold you up against. So this could be, have you had direct experience with, a ransomware attack before? That would make you way more valuable than someone who just ideates what it could be like and has created contingency plans. If you have seen a ransomware attack happen in your company before, kind of like Marcus has, that will set you above and beyond, because they think, oh, you've already seen it happen. You can give proper advice or create proper solutions as to how we can protect ourselves in the next event of a data breach. These are the things that will set you apart. Don't try to get ahead with merit only. You will suffer. You need to set the expectation that you have this kind of special life story that sets you apart and gives you no competition. And I want you guys to take some time over this weekend to write down your life story, and it will help you spin an aura about yourself that you can show to people who are most likely to be, sympathetic to your experiences, to the point at which they won't be expecting you to have such a high level of security expertise for them to give you a chance in an interview?
Absolutely. That's really great advice. Because now that you said that, I know I've been saying that you need to know yourself and seek self-improvement, but I guess the way I really differentiated myself is that I gravitated to one particular portion of GRC. So once, as you all can see, you might see a GRC analyst role, but please try to understand those different functionalities that are operating within there, because you might be really good at compliance, meaning that you're really good at communicating with other departments. That's probably going to be a little more senior skill, but risk management, everybody can do. So risk management is something that you can just dive in on. You can also get, I don't want to tell people to get certifications, but when you're looking at your certification ladder, right? Like for me right now, we were talking about it makes sense to get the CISA. And then we saw that other position that needed a CISM. And even though it's one letter off, those are two different skill sets, right? Like one is the auditor and one is the manager of an information security system. And so if you can just zone in, Navy Fed is a huge bank over here for military people, and they're a really good company to work for, actually. But here's one thing I wanted to point out when I first pulled up these roles, because I think I was telling you that one popped up here at the company I did an internship with, and I was really salty that I didn't get looked at for this position. And the more I looked into it, I realized that IT risk is above information security risk. So where I was doing my internship was at information security analyst position, right? But up here at IT, you're taking into consideration more than information security, right? They're actually looking at your firewall configurations, network strategies and stuff. But here they are talking about SOC 1, 2, a disaster recovery plan, as you said. I know the guy that's hiring for this position, and I know what he does, and it's a super cool job, but there's a gap that I know that's there in my knowledge, and it's mainly right there. A C risk and a CISA. And it's not that I don't have the ability to know that information, and I think they all know I'm capable, right? But this is currently where I am right now, trying to get a CISA, and they need somebody that knows how to audit a system, someone that understands the methodology, how to set testing parameters, how to stay within scope. Really close, right? I can have this conversation with this guy in 3 years, right? Where I can come back and say, hey, I've been doing this work. And this is where you have to start looking at your job search as a long-term goal. It's not a job search, it's a career goal. As we talked about for cybersecurity, I picked it because my ultimate goal is to have a bunch of acres and animals. I would prefer to be out back after we get off this call. I prefer to go feed some cows or something. And you can do that as long as you have internet service and you have a job that's going to allow you to do this. I already know they want you in the office for 3 days out of the month for this job, which is perfectly fine. I actually met the former CEO of that first, and he ran this 200-acre farm that's outside of Columbia here for the past 20 years while he was the CEO of the bank. And I was asking him, how do you do that? And he said, you don't sleep a lot. Right? But either way, I guess what I'm saying is you can identify with different companies, make your connections. If you can get an internship, take the internship, take the experience, network while you're in there. This opens up where if you get your foot in the door, and as you start looking at these jobs, start thinking about your 3-year goal from now. So what can I do in my role now that can give me the skills to be competitive here in 3 years? I know that I need to get on Azure more because they're migrating to Azure, so I could get Azure certifications. Right now I have AWS certifications. It's a little different, but still the same. So, and the biggest thing was .NET, being able to understand .NET in their development process. He was more technical, right? So I guess what I'm saying is being able to look at these job roles. At first, I was really upset they didn't look at me. And then I realized, hey, it's a senior role too. That's another thing. All that means something. If you see analyst, that's usually a junior level, like he's at the lower level. You go from analyst to principal to associate, and then you start getting up, right? So either way, I think that's a good place to close it off right there. Now that we understand where GRC lies in the organization, you're the connection between the business vision and the actual technical operations that need to happen to make that vision work. So you're checking that process all the way in between.
Of course. I want to thank you, Marcus, for coming to that end because, as I mentioned to you guys before, as the weeks goes on, I will invite a recruiter to come here with us, and we will discuss exactly how to read the job description. What we've given you right now is a good foundation for you to start having a look, just to play around and get used to the wording. But he or she, I don't know, we're going to have yet, but they will go over the specifics of it. And next week, we are going to be talking about IT knowledge. So as I said in this one, IT knowledge is not everything, but for those of you who are new to the tech world in general, you need to understand the basics of technology before you move on to network security, which is what GRC analysts focus on. So that will be a very interesting conversation. Now, if you guys have any questions, I'd like you to comment below what they are. And please, I'm going to start a rating system for our shows. I want you guys to rate it out of 10 before you make your comment. The reason being is we always want to know how to improve and the new suggestions that we should be making for you guys. So thank you for coming to listen. Thank you, Marcus, for giving me your time this morning.
Thank you, Miriam. I appreciate it.
And yes, I will see you guys next week, Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern time. For me, it's the afternoon. I'm based in London. So yes, thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you. Bye.